Hello, Tar Heel Nation. We are back with another UNC Hoops Talk podcast. I'm your host, Dan DeWitt. I got Gil here joining me once again, and thanks for joining us. It's been a long time. Happy New Year. I was just talking to Gil offline here before we started, and the last podcast that we did was titled something about the 5-game winning streak we've been on. So it's been a long time. I believe middle of December or something like that. So we got plenty to talk to here. Kind of go through the ups and downs of UNC basketball right now and kind of see where we project going forward from here. But since the last time we podcast, we were on a 5-game winning streak after beating Furman. Since then, we played the CBS Sports Classic, which, as we talked on that podcast, was supposed to be number 2 UCLA. They had COVID protocols, did not show up. Ohio State as well, so we said, why not? Let's just play Kentucky. And hindsight's 2020. That was not a good decision. 98-69 score there. I didn't even go back and watch it. I was going to watch it recorded, and everybody told me not to, so I didn't. But we rebounded a little bit from there. 20-point win against Appalachian State, 70-50. And then we were supposed to jump right into ACC play before the new year and Virginia Tech protocols as well. We postponed that game, so we have a fairly big, almost a week, almost 2 weeks really off from basketball before we went up to Boston College and kind of beat them in 91-65, and everything's looking golden. After that Kentucky win, we're kind of back. We got it figured out, and then we traveled to Notre Dame this past Wednesday and give up a 78-73 loss to the Fighting Irish, and so we're back down in the dumps here. And then today, a team that we've had plenty of struggles with in the past, but is not the same team as they usually are. And we kind of get our revenge on Virginia in Chapel Hill today, 74-58. Big game for Armando Bacot there. And yeah, like I said, that's a lot since the last time we podcasted. So that's what we're going to jump into. Gil, do you have a good Christmas, New Year? We're all set here and ready to go.
Yeah, been a lot that has happened, a lot happening in the world. And did you remember about the Virginia Tech game being postponed due to COVID protocols? Did you mention that and all of that? I don't remember if you did or not.
It was a ways back there, but I did hit it, I believe.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, have had good holidays. Thank you, and yeah, happy New Year to all the listeners and viewers out there. And glad to have a win, rebounding from a disappointing performance in South Bend. Armando Bacot, the last two games, has been just a beast. And man, was he huge today. 29 points, 21 rebounds. That's the last 2020 performance since Bryce Johnson, I believe, for the Tar Heels. And the first time it's been done against UVA since Tim Duncan. So it's been quite a long time. And yeah, we owed UVA one. It's our first victory over them in the last 8 tries. So definitely needed that one. Definitely felt like we were going to get them this year. They are down from where they have been, but yet they're still a respectable team. They're just kind of fit into the ACC this year. Kind of the prototype ACC team is really mediocre, to
Yeah,
be
that's not
quite
saying
honest
much.
with you. Yeah. But it still feels good to get an ACC win. It still feels good to beat a Tony Bennett team, and get one back against UVA for sure. The performance against Notre Dame, that was disappointing. I feel like even myself, when I was on Twitter, I was perhaps more negative than I usually am because I was just frustrated. And I think you touched on something at the beginning when you were introducing, all that's happened and up and down year. That's what I think we have right now in a nutshell is inconsistency. And we might have been speaking about that during the last podcast, but I really feel like that sums up what this team is about because they look great in their good performances. They look great today against UVA. They looked fantastic against Boston College on the road. But in between, against Notre Dame, just they didn't have it. And I was listening to the post game uh, podcast with Dewey Burke earlier, and he was talking about finding ways to beat teams when you don't have your best stuff. So far, this team hasn't been able to do that, and I think that's going to come from defensive consistency. When you don't have your shot going in, say you're on the road, tough environment, you find a way to make game-winning plays, and they didn't do that down the stretch after fighting back from being down 13 early in the second half against Notre Dame. So to fight that fight back and get close, and then kind of squander it there in crunch time with some just poor decisions and not winning plays. Basically, that was let down. That was disappointing. We were all hoping because Notre Dame, another one of those ACC teams that's just so, and that was a winnable game, even though for 75% of it we didn't play our best, but we were in a position to win late in the game, and then just kind of blew it. Defensive lapses, poor decision making on the offense, a bad break or two, and boom, you catch an L.
Yeah, and defensive consistency, I think we is what we've seen in championship years. We know you're gonna have off game shooting or just offense is just lagging or the energy's not there, whatever you want to say. But if when we get the defensive, because I think we've all said, predictions. I know somebody tweeted at me or in one of the group chats I'm in or something's like, the predictions podcast that we do before the season, like, hey, I need to redo my predictions. And we all had kind of high hopes preseason. We got the talent to go, Elite Eight, Final Four, wherever your gauge is. We all feel like we have the talent to go pretty far, but right now we don't have the consistency that we've had in Final Four years or championship years. And yeah, like you said, the ACC is down big time this year. I think people have kind of said in the last couple of years, even like it's not the same as it's been. But this year is just noticeable. Duke being the only ranked ACC team right now, and
And
we're
the only team
probably
getting a vote is what I
yeah. I
heard.
mean, say we're probably the second. Who else is up there? And we're what 3-1, so we're probably at least second or in right in that kind of tier. And yeah, we're not even getting those rankings because of kind of who we're losing to and who we're beating really.
Well, and
Because
that's what you want to see from this team at this point is solidify yourself, separate yourself from these middle of the pack teams rather than just fit in amongst them. Don't play down to that competition. And that's something that I think that we should talk about because it was a big talking point coming out of the Notre Dame loss was effort. And same with the Kentucky, which we haven't been on this podcast since that. So we have two games in the non-conference slate, Tennessee and Kentucky, that were just extremely poor effort. Just, guys looked like they didn't want to be there. And then the Notre Dame game was not quite to that level, but Caleb Love admitted in post-game press conference that he just wasn't invested, didn't bring his energy to the first half, and it showed. I'm not
yeah,
sure what his stats were in that first half, maybe 2 points or something like that, but he played much better in the second half. But to openly admit that, I think that took some level of self responsibility. But it's just like when are we going to see some accountability? I keep hearing from Hubert, got to play with energy, toughness, and effort. And he said that multiple times. He said that before the season started. He said that here a couple times during the season. But where's the accountability? Where are we actually seeing that? Okay, that player is putting forth that effort game in and game out, or they're not, and they're sitting on the bench as a
yeah,
result.
yeah, yeah. And we still want to have kind of a conversation when Blake gets back onto the podcast about rotations and kind of how Hubert's doing, but we gotta keep saving that off, push it off, and I guess keep bringing people back in. But yeah, I mean, that's what makes the Notre Dame game such a hard loss. Is like we were right there. We got the lead even late. There was what 2-3 minutes left. We'd fought all the way back and from double digit deficits and gotten the lead. And it was but like you said, the energy wasn't there, and we just never kind of sustained that. And we went away from Baycott. You mentioned his stats today, but that game 17 points, 21 rebounds, or maybe the other way around 21 points, 17 rebounds. Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
But the
but
thing
that easily
was
could have
only four
been
shots, only
right.
four shot
Second half,
attempts in the
four
second
shots.
half. Yeah.
Yep.
After really dominating and keeping us in it in the first half. I think we were down four at halftime, and he was our definitely the only player keeping us alive in that game. And then the rest of the team showed up in the second half, but we got away from what worked, particularly in crunch time. You think about a Roy Williams coach team, when you need a bucket late in the game in that crunch time situation, you go to the big.
You go
And
inside.
yeah, we didn't
And
feed.
I mean, especially
Yeah,
when he's having the game that he's having. It's
yeah.
it's one thing if he's been in foul trouble and not played much, and guys have hit from the outside to keep us in the game, but he was everything that was working, and then we still didn't keep going to him. So, but like you said, the ACC's down. We've kind of lost our big matchups. We Purdue we looked great, but we still lost it. Tennessee we got blown out. Kentucky we got blown out. And it's we've talked about the ACC now. It's like going forward, we don't have those marquee games where we can really show how good we've gotten. Besides, Duke is probably the only two that we're going to have. Everybody else, just like us, is unranked, and so even if we beat them, even if we end up second in the ACC, everybody's going to be saying, "Well, how good are they really?" They've only, if we don't beat Duke or, really almost kind of blow them out or really, take it to them. If we even pull out a win, but it's kind of ugly, people are going to say, "Well, Duke had an off night. How good really is North Carolina?" And it's going to be something we struggle with going into the NCAA tournament if we don't fix it.
Well, in normal years, you would hope for quality wins, but this year there's not none to be had in the ACC with the exception of Duke. So it's about quantity. I think it's now you just got to rack up wins. You can't afford any more performances or losses like Notre Dame. You just can't afford them. You've got to have a quantity of wins to make up for the fact that there's no quality available really for you to get. I did speak with Blake on the phone actually the other day, which just popped into my mind, and I want to relay some of that conversation because we talked about the effort. We talked about not feeding Armando. He pointed out, the quote from Armando's dad, that he was disgusted and how could he not get the ball, late in those game situations. And I think that's what the frustration level is a little bit for the fan base is, and I'm speaking for myself in particular, is when you see a low basketball IQ, decision crop up, and not just a decision, but like consistently
Yeah.
those types of things surface and that cost you games. Like why are you forcing a contested spin around, shot? I think it's been referenced, in terms of Caleb Love late in the game. Um, YOLO shot versus passing the ball around, getting some good ball movement, which we saw today against UVA. So I'm going to spin it back to the positive. Is we did see that much better ball movement, and I would say overall, when Carolina has played well, the number of assists compared to when we don't play well and we have losses, the number of assists on the made shots, I think is going to be like a really telling stat, really contrast between the ball's moving, we're getting, the people who are hot touches. But that's what you want to see out of, a well coached team is that they're thinking about who has the hot hand, who do we need to go to in this type of situation. And I think that that's one thing, and Hubert has even addressed this, that there's somewhat of a lack of leadership. We're starting to see Armando, uh, start to step up in that regard, as an upperclassman. But you need solid and if not great leadership to execute down the stretch on the road in ACC contests, even if it is a mediocre team. They're going to play more enthused in their home court. Notre Dame, everybody's going to always step up when they're playing against Carolina. But you need a leader that's going to step up in those situations and just refuse to lose. And Carolina's still developing that, still figuring out who that is.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great if Armando will do that, but it's so much easier when it's your point guard or a lead guard like that, and I think that's what we're kind of waiting from Caleb Love is, and I think we see moments, but it's kind of like you said, there's too many consistent bad choices or bad kind of reads or whatever it is, and I think it's been said about him before, but I think we still see kind of his game predicates off of how his offense is going, and so if he's not going early or if he never really gets it going against Notre Dame, then the defense end kind of is affected by that and the energy on that end as opposed to your defense affecting the energy
Yeah.
and picking up the offense. And that's kind of the yin and yang we had with Notre Dame is and obviously one's a road game, you don't have the crowd behind you, whatever, but I mean that's college basketball. But between the Notre Dame game and the Virginia game, before we did move on, we mentioned the UCLA being in protocols. We had the Virginia Tech game postponed. We've had a little bit of trouble with that. Kerwin has missed a couple of games now, being in protocols. Justin McCoy was out the two previous games, I think, in protocols, and on top of that, I believe it was the Boston College game where Garcia got hurt like 2 minutes into the game, and he's missed the next two after that. So pretty much 3 games that we've had without Garcia. Not that that's an excuse. I think Notre Dame, like we've said, was still winnable. We still looked good today, but it does kind of add up minute wise for Armando and Brady Manick. I know a lot of people on Twitter were saying the end of that Notre Dame game, Brady Manick looked really tired. Armando played 37 minutes in that game. Today, Armando played 38. Uh, Looking at Brady Manick was at 32 again. So, I mean, obviously, hopefully, we get Garcia back quickly, but we don't know how long that's going to be. Looking forward, kind of to that, and kind of the effects. What do you see? That's besides the obvious of minutes being there, being a versatile player, but kind of how does that affect us as you're watching the game?
Yeah. Every team in the country is dealing with this, so it's not unique to UNC and it's not an excuse. I do think the absence of Garcia against Notre Dame may have been somewhat pivotal and could have influenced the outcome potentially. Again, it was a winnable game. I feel like the Tar Heels really should have won that game. And it probably did affect Manic late in the game. He did look gassed, and he did have some defensive lapses where Leszewski hit the dagger threes late in the game, and that was his responsibility. So that could have had an impact there. Definitely hope to get Kerwin back and Garcia back, hopefully for the next game. We do have a week off until next Saturday. I think, are we playing Georgia Tech
Georgia
next?
Tech, yep.
Yeah. But yeah, everybody's dealing with it, and the team hasn't been hit as hard. Of course, the other school from Durham got away with like a whole pause and like let's just change the rules of the
Well, they had
ACC no
away games.
contest
They had away
situation.
games there.
So we don't need to talk anymore about that. But yeah, it's affected the rotation. We've seen Ant Harris getting some more minutes, and he's starting to, I think, elevate his game. I think he played solid today against UVA. He had a three in that stretch where Carolina really stretched out the lead, and he brings in some energy. And obviously, we see him as backup to Leaky in terms of trying to be a defensive stopper as well. And maybe he'll start to see more minutes alongside RJ or Caleb. And I've seen a little bit more actually three guard, the three of them playing together. They did that a little bit against Notre Dame. That was just a better matchup for us, playing three of those guards versus having the forward and Leaky and then the two guards. And I think I saw a little bit of that today against UVA. So that's just like a different look that we can put out against other teams, and that might be something that we need in certain games when things just aren't clicking or we need to match up a little differently. So that's something. And we did see some extended minutes for the freshmen against Boston College in the route, and then on the road against Notre Dame. And I thought they came in and did a couple of good things. You can't expect too much out of them. There was maybe a poor shot selection or two in there, but there was also some contribution on the defensive end, and so they're starting to get their feet wet and they're starting to adjust to the speed of the college game.
Yeah, and that's what that I was gonna add in there is I mean, we haven't really dealt with protocols, s besides the last 2 years, but, I mean, we've dealt with plenty of injuries, and normally, when we go through this, it's kind of like, "Okay, it's time for someone else to step up and get their chance," and, I think we saw that with Anthony Harris earlier in the season when he kinda broke into the rotation. Hopefully, we can kinda see that this is McCoy's first game back, but,
He
I
hit a
mean,
nice three
yeah, I
against
was gonna say
his
he
former school, so I bet that felt really good.
he produced a little bit at least. Still, I'm looking at the minutes and I kinda surprised only 8 minutes for him, but, he's getting in there, and like you said, Notre Dame, the
First
freshman
game
got a
back
little
from
bit of
COVID
run.
protocols, though.
It's true, but and we're kinda on the edge of there of getting into this, minutes debate and rotation and all this stuff, but, um, yeah, it's hopefully those guys kinda keep progressing. I know it's tough now that we're in ACC to, get minutes unless it's absolutely needed because of foul trouble, injury, or something like that, but hopefully they're at least getting their toes wet so that, when they are called upon, we get productive production from them or
Well,
positive production.
in truth, they should be able to get some minutes because we should be able to beat teams by 20 points or more. A lot of these teams, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't beat teams like we did today against UVA at home or even on the road against teams like Boston College. I think Wake Forest is actually going to be a tough challenge this year, but there's a lot of teams that I think we should beat handily, and that should allow Hubert to stretch out the rotation a little bit.
Yeah, so
Just
with
being
that,
honest.
I guess we can transition into kind of what's coming up. You mentioned already next Saturday, Georgia Tech comes to Chapel Hill. We played them middle of December, early December, something like that for our first ACC game. Went to Atlanta and beat them 79-62. So obviously a little bit of revenge for them if they could come into Chapel Hill and steal one. If we remember that game, Leaky kind of shut down DeVoe. who at that point was the nation's leading scorer. I don't know what he's been doing since, but we know Leaky did take kind of, and I think that's the one where Anthony Harris kind of broke out a little bit as well, playing defense. So we got Georgia Tech coming to town. That's Saturday. It's an 8 p.m. Eastern tip on ACC Network. At least I hope it says ACCN. I'm hoping that's ACC Network and the only reason I question that is because then the following Tuesday we go to Miami, and that one's a 7 p.m. Eastern tip, and that one says ACC Network. So that's what I'm hoping ACCN is network as well, even though it's a little bit different there on this schedule. But yeah, we got Georgia Tech. We beat them already. We expect to beat them at home. Miami is down. We kind of expect to beat them, and then after that we go to Wake. They've been looking pretty good. I haven't watched them, but obviously their record, they're winning their games, and they look like they're playing pretty well. And that's at their place, so that may be tough. But we kind of expect to beat them. Then we got Boston College. We should beat them, and then that leads us into NC State, who I think at this point we would expect to beat too. That's at home. So yeah, we look at those games, and like you said, there's kind of when we look at it and our talent, and it should be wins, but we're like I said before, I titled this "The Up and Downs of UNC basketball" here. So you know, how confident are you that we're going to start beating teams by 20, or we're going to pile on these wins that we've kind of said in this podcast already?
Yeah, how confident? I would not say I'm as confident as I should be, to be honest with you. And we've had these conversations, Blake, yourself, and me off the air about we don't want to see this program. And of course, no one within the program wants to see this either. You know, fall back into a middling, we've compared it to like Indiana or even UCLA until, recent years, they're having somewhat of a resurgence. So we don't want to see that. We want to see this team step up like they did today. Armando is quoted as saying this was like a Scarface game, like take no prisoners, go out there and go for the kill and be dominant. And if they can bring that kind of mentality to every game moving forward, and hopefully that's what they're developing, and hopefully that's what the coaching staff is instilling in the players, then I think that we should. I sometimes don't like to use that word. We should, but we should be able to do that. How confident am I that we won't have a lapse like we did against Notre Dame? I wish I was more confident. I could see us, put another stinker out there, perhaps on the road against a team like Wake Forest, who just comes out with more energy and enthusiasm. But if we show up with the same level of energy and enthusiasm, then we should be able to compete, and not more than compete. We should be able to win that game. Maybe not by 20, but against a lot of these teams that are down, the Pitts, the Miamis, obviously the Boston College, Georgia Tech at home. We should take care of business and win handily going away, I think.
Yeah, I know. I want I want to be so positive looking at these games. Like, oh yeah. So let's see. We're on a well, I guess one game winning streak now. We add in Georgia Tech, Miami, Wake Forest, Boston College, NC State, and then even far beyond that, Louisville before we play Duke. It's like, man, we should be on a 7 game winning streak heading into the first Duke game early February. But yeah, I'm like you. You just kind of feel like there's one in there, and I guess
Yeah.
Wake Forest would be the obvious one, but I mean, who knows? We go to Miami and just.
Would you be happy with 6-1? Like on paper, that seems okay.
I mean, I think you have to take it, but to me, it's kind of like, well, that depends who the one is.
Hmm.
I guess if it's at Wake, then I guess we're doing pretty good. But I mean, if we beat Wake Forest by 20, but we ended up losing to Miami right before that, or Boston College right after that, like, I mean, I wouldn't be happy with that game for sure. So, I
If
mean,
they're able to follow the recipe that they use today, feed Baycott, get Baycott going early. The guards, even though RJ maybe didn't have the best stat line, he did a lot of good things in the game today, and he played with energy and effort. And so if the guards are bringing energy and effort, and there's a defensive tone that's being set early in the game that they're able to maintain throughout, then we absolutely should go 7-0 and be facing off the Duke with two ranked teams. But this team has not proven that they have been consistent enough to do that. That's what we're all just watching at this point. The jury's still out to see, can they bring consistency? Can they bring effort consistently? Because
yeah.
at this point in the season, what are we? We're 11-3. Is that a record?
Oh, let me see if I can find it real quick. We
Sorry, I
are
just don't think we
11
should
and
then.
4, 3-1 in
11 and
the
4.
ACC.
Okay, 11 and 4. So 15 games in, we haven't seen consistency.
Yeah.
So we need to see consistency over the next stretch of
When
games.
and I know you've said it a lot, and you mentioned at the beginning that's kind of where we need to start talking is consistency. But I mean, it's so spot on. Like RJ today is 0 for 10, 0 for 5 from three. And I mean, we've seen him have great games. Caleb, even from half to half, you mentioned Notre Dame. He probably had like 2 points at halftime. He came out a little bit more aggressive, but then we started going away from Baycott in that game. Even today, I don't remember what he was at halftime, but it wasn't great at halftime. And then he really turned it on, and he ended up with. Let me look real quick. He ended up with 16,
16,
assists
yeah,
today. So,
and
and
only
then
one
some.
turnover, I think.
Yep, and some big plays, driving to the basket, hitting some threes. They kept showing his reaction after that one three where he turned around over and over, like it was,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know. And so, but even that, it's half to half, half to half that he's inconsistent or consistent.
Yeah.
Really, the most consistent player we got right now is probably Leaky Black, and that's because he didn't take a shot today, and that's
Hmm.
been consistent with what he's done. He's taken five or less shots in I don't know how many straight games. So
Well, going back, you mentioned the predictions pod, and I don't remember. I don't think I called Caleb Love the X factor. I think I said Kerwin Walton is our X factor, and he still could be because we're just starting to get him reintroduced in the offense, and then of course COVID sets it back. But I feel like Caleb is our most important player in terms of how his motor's going, and he's a microcosm for the macrocosm. When he's inconsistent, this team is inconsistent.
yeah,
But when he brings the effort, the energy, and the enthusiasm, and the toughness, then we are a much better team because Baycott he's the stabilizing. He is the consistent. He has been showing up since game one. He's a double double machine right now, and so we need that consistency out of Caleb Love, and then we hopefully will see consistency, with the results and wins in the win column for this team. So I feel like he's the microcosm for the macrocosm, but he is the key player that really influences how we go, and we
yeah. I
have
don't think there's.
seen a couple moments where he did let defense kind of dictate. He stepped into a passing lane, got a nice steal near the sideline out of bounds that led to a fast break in the game today. I think he dribbled it down and actually made a nice pull up jumper. But against Notre Dame, we saw some of the Caleb Love from last year where he like dribbled into the paint, didn't really know where he was going to go. Offensive foul or turnover was the result, or poor shot. So we want to avoid seeing that. We want to see good decision making, locked in, and I think that's all it is. Is like, yeah, be focused, be determined, be ready and prepared to do what it takes to win. That's what
Yeah,
we need to see.
yeah. I don't think there's any question that he is the most important, and we kind of go as he goes. Which, I mean, when we get to the tournament, it's usually a guards tournament. But just looking back, kind of to your point, 0 assists to 4 turnovers against Notre Dame, um, and like we said, 5-1 in this Virginia game. So, and RJ hasn't let it. He had that nice block on the fast break. It was like a 3-on-1, and he blocked the point guard from
Clark.
Virginia. And he's there even when he's got an off game, and we kind of need that from Caleb, even if he's not hitting shots, because like we said before, half to half he could be so inconsistent. If he's off the first half, the defense has to be there so that when the second half he gets it going, it's not like we have to come back all the time.
He just needs to envision the other team is wearing a Duke jersey every game out.
Exactly right, exactly right. And so, yeah, that we're kind of leading up, and like you've mentioned already, we got to build up those wins until we get to Duke, so that we can get a big time win or two against Duke this year to kind of set us up going forward. But hopefully, we don't have as big of a layoff in podcasts as we did this last time. I'm looking at the schedule, and hopefully, um, we don't have one this week, so we'll probably wait until after the Miami game on that Tuesday. Maybe even try to. I don't know if you don't like those late night ones because you're Eastern time, but being here in Central time, maybe try to do a post game Miami one or next Wednesday night or something. Get it right after that Miami game. But yeah, try to get back into podcasting more here. And speaking of that, we just want to make sure you guys are subscribed wherever you're taking in the podcast, whether it be here on YouTube, where we often stream it live, or anywhere you're listening on any podcast app. Make sure you're subscribed, because, like I just got done saying, we got no schedule to this. We kind of shoot from our hips and go when it works for us, and all that stuff. But hopefully, again, like I said, we're not waiting another month or almost a month for the next podcast. and hopefully next time we podcast, we're on a nice little winning streak as we go. But I think we've pretty much covered the gambit here, even though we did have so much to talk about. Is there anything that you feel like we've missed out on, Gil? We got everything covered here.
Let's keep racking up those wins. That's what we got to do. It's about quantity over quality moving until we see the Blue Devils.
Well, we'd like to have the quality too, but yeah, we definitely need those wins as we get closer to March. We need to see that win record keep going, and again, like we've said all podcasts, the way the ACC is, we have to rack them up. But Gil, thanks for jumping on and joining me here.
Thanks,
Um,
Dan.
and everybody out there, thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting the podcast. We love you guys, and hope your 2022 isn't dependent on the Tar Heel wins or losses, but that is a good one for you, and that you'll keep coming back to support this podcast and support our Tar Heels. But that's all we got here. Until next time, go Heels.